it hit me in my gut for sure. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to post about it. Wrote this thing, which is still up on LinkedIn about like, yeah, but I was safe, and 4 days later, get laid off. I treat it like content, honestly. Every couple of days I post more about it, tell a story of like, I know a lot of people are struggling. I also am struggling with this job search. Please, if you see anything, let me know. And then I also just started sending it to people who were also struggling. Of like, hey, here's a job. How can I help? And just the amount of DMs I got were overwhelming, probably 1,000.
This episode is about the courage of vulnerability. Being vulnerable is hard and it's scary in the safest parts of our lives. And when it comes to our careers, most of us are taught not to be vulnerable. That being vulnerable and honest is a bug, not a feature, and it can feel nearly impossible to have the courage to be vulnerable when it comes to our professional lives. So I sat down with Ryan McCready. He's been in senior content and growth roles at Reforge, at Whimsical, he's at DemoStack now, and we talked about how vulnerability has been an asset that has helped him to shape and advance his career. From posting openly about getting laid off on LinkedIn, you just heard a preview of this conversation in our intro, and he turned that into a wave of new opportunities, to sending DMs and introducing himself to new contacts online that have changed his professional path, to admitting when you don't know how to handle tough manager and leadership situations. It's a conversation about how choosing honesty, even when it's hard and really uncomfortable, can unlock a ton of growth and upside that you never expected. It's enough from me. Let's go ahead and hear from Ryan McCready.
When I was probably about 15 or 16, YouTube took off, and I just got so into all the people that were making videos, all that stuff. And I actually was like, I need to get a MacBook. I need to learn how to edit. I made this deal with my parents. I'm like, I will clean out our attic and all that stuff if you let me sell all this stuff on eBay. And I made like $2,000 over the summer doing that. So I got a MacBook Air or whatever it was back there. That's like when I started wanted to be like a content creator, a writer. I got really into like figuring out how the internet worked in those early days. From there, I didn't really do much yet until I got to college. And then one of my friends, his girlfriend at the time was one of the editors at the college newspaper. And they're like, hey, we're looking for diverse voices or looking for new things. So I was like, I applied, wrote for them as just like a regular writer for a year. Then I became an editor. Then I became editor in chief. And like, that's where I really learned how to create content at scale and kind of find my voice. And it kind of led me into this world of content and growth and tech and all that stuff. And I got my degree in economics, but right after I graduated, I'm like, I don't want to go work for like Walmart corporate office, Tyson, JB Hunt, all these big companies that are down there. I'm like, I do not want to do that. So I just kind of started doing my own thing and built a tech review site. Had no idea how to code, had no idea how to use WordPress, none of that, and just kind of figured it out. I was an early Buffer user to like schedule all these tweets, grew it from like 0 to like 50,000 organic views a month, just kind of by myself, hacking Pinterest together, Dig, Flipbook, all those things. I was just like, how do I kind of hack these to make me seem like I know what I'm doing or I'm much bigger than I was? And like looking back, I wish I would have kept it and just kept running it. Back then, like that was such a big thing to do from like a one-person shop. I feel like now you might be a little bit easier to do it. But that kind of got me into this tech world of creation, of SEO, of all that stuff.
It's crazy that you kind of knew at a young age what you wanted to grow up and more or less do, or at least there's sort of a linear path, more so than other folks who I get to chat with.
A bit linear, yeah. Like economics was so math based, so I thought I'd do like at the time I was planning on going to grad school actually to do like economics professorship because all the teachers I had were so amazing and like got my head around these really, really complex topics and finding the story in the math. I think that also helps me a lot right now is like, oh, what is this? What are all these metrics doing? What are these? How can I tell a story with it? So that really pushed me to be like, hey, do I want to be like an economics professor and do like deep research and stuff like that? So I've like gotten into grad school and I just never really went to it because I'm like, again, I kind of want to do my own thing. And that's what led to a lot of this stuff.
So you're building your own thing. Is there like a moment at some point along the way where you realize like, hey, maybe I got something here. Like maybe I'm passionate about this and maybe I'm good at it too?
Yeah, I should have monetized it so much earlier. Like I was just because like my parents were super supportive. I did like freelancing and stuff on the side. Like I didn't really have to do crazy monetization day one. I wish I would have, just looking back now. of all the things that I know. By that time, I'd been building it for like a year, doing freelancing. And I was kind of starting to just be like, this is a lot of work for one person. And I do not have the expertise to do the next step. So I started talking to people, like people wanted to buy it, they wanted to partner with it, all that stuff. But I just was like, I need something new. I don't think this is what I want to do forever. And again, looking back, I probably should have doubled down on it. But I was 23 and just had no idea what I could do.
What year was this?
Would have been 15, I think. I graduated in 2014, 15. I joined Vengage in 16 and learned, like, if I would have went like Vengage first and then building everything, I would have been like killing it, because it was just like it was basically like going to like marketing university, SEO university. We were just so deep in the weeds of like early marketing stuff that I think people coming up now won't even get to, because it's changing so fast. It's just the fundamentals that you had to learn back then to make sure you grew. And it was still a little bit more like monoculture marketing, where like SEO was the name of the game. You get number one on a big keyword, you got a business basically. And now it's so fragmented, things are broken. It's not as simple as it once was.
So I totally agree. And what's crazy is if you had stayed on that trajectory, obviously you didn't, but man, 10 years in the creator game and already starting at the level that you were talking about, my gosh, dude.
It's crazy. It's funny in the creator game, because like I always have a tendency to burn out on the creator game, which is probably why I had never done it full time. Is it's just like, I'll get really, like when I was at Foundation with Ross, like I got really big in the game very fast, just because I had his backing and his kind of following and all that stuff. But I really could only do it for like 6 months. And then I'm like, I can't, my brain is tapped out. I'm writing these big teardowns that blow up and I have to answer all these questions. And it's just, I kind of like having the ability to like take a step back and do like boring work.
And to take your foot off the treadmill a little bit. There's always more, right? When you're a creator, there's always more, and there's always higher quality, and there's always something you could tinker with. And what if I do this? And I feel like I'm drowning in that, dude. I understand that on a deep level. So obviously you don't stay in the creator game in this business. You go in-house, you eventually land your way at Reforge after Foundation to Whimsical. Obviously you're at Demo Stack. So I want to dig into a few of the speed bumps and the lessons that you learned from that stuff along the way. Let's start with some feedback, man. I am very curious to know from you in your journey, what's some of the toughest feedback that either you've had to give or you've been on the receiving end for, and what you learned from it?
A lot of it throughout my career is like, not everyone's kind of cut out to be a creator. Like they can create, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be, I don't want to say good enough, but maybe like it's not going to stand above the noise of every other average creator. And I think that's a lot of hard feedback I've had to give to like maybe up and coming writers or people that are freelancers. Like I am the toughest editor. You can ask, oh God, who did I do it with? There's another podcast. He doesn't run it anymore, but he would have you like edit one of his articles like real time in front of him.
Tommy Walker? Was it the studying room?
Yes. Yeah. Tommy.
Yeah. So I know Tommy. Yeah.
You have to watch that. I think I broke him with that edit because I'm such a tough editor, and it's kind of tough feedback, but you don't want to be like too mean about it. So that's walking the line of being like super constructive of like, yeah, I see where you're going with this, but it's kind of missing X, Y, Z. And like some people are like, oh, I know how to do that. And other people are like, let me try again. And it never really gets there. So like just working with freelancers or like up and coming writers, like that's some hard feedback I've had to give.
And how have you learned how to do that? Like, have you been through like manager training and how to give nice constructive feedback? Or is that something that comes from inside of you? Like, where does that kind of come from, do you think?
I think I'm a very like empathetic person at my core. And like, I know how it feels to get like kind of harsh feedback when you don't really deserve it. So I never want to be like just out for blood with some of these comments and stuff like that. But like, I also know how helpful it can be to have like someone kind of guide you and teach you and be like, this is where you need to pivot and put something because you've already kind of lost them with something up here, or you need a visual here, or you should have a much better intro. I mean, I want to help them get better. So I will take the time to really try to frame it in a way that's constructive, or kind of give them maybe not a way out, but a way to like take it or leave it. Like, I'm not going to be like, you have to do this, but I'm like, I think it'd be better if X, Y, Z.
This episode is presented by Navattic. If you've been following me or you're a fan of this show, you know how bullish I am on the interactive demo space and how much I love the Navattic team. Done a ton of stuff with them over the years, and they just dropped a bunch of new features that are really exciting. First, they've got a new template library. You can choose from a bunch of pre-made templates that have the most common demo use cases and all of the best practices built in, help you go 0 to 1 in a few seconds. If you're not sure what to build, they also have a new AI storyboard generator. It's exactly how it sounds. You drop in a website URL or some copy or a landing page, whatever you've got, it reads the information, pulls out the key sections, and then builds a working product demo for you in a couple minutes. And after you've built your demo, you're gonna probably wanna use your data as part of your go-to-market approach. They've got a bunch of plug-and-play demo playbooks where you can send that interaction data to your CRM, you can use it to trigger alerts, all kinds of good stuff. It's actually a bunch of the things that my team built manually. It took us forever when I was in-house, so I love this. And after you've built your demo, if you need to make any adjustments, if you're displaying numbers or data as part of that, they have a new table AI feature, which helps you to clean up that data in a more conversational way and at scale in just a few seconds. They have made it so stinking easy to use your product as your marketing tool without needing an engineer or heavy design work. You can get started with all of this in their free plan. Check it out at navattic.com/value to get started. That's navattic.com/value. So it's interesting, as I listen to you share this, one of my last episodes that I published was with Justin Bauer. He was the chief product officer at Amplitude. I believe he's from Idaho, somewhere in the Midwest. And he said when he got into tech, he said giving constructive feedback and receiving it was so out of character for him culturally, just being where he grew up and the way that his family communicated and the way that his peers communicated in his community. And so I would consider Kansas City also the Midwest, at least my in-laws, I think, consider it. And so culturally, that feels similar to the way that Justin described it. And so I'm curious to know for you, is that just like the way you were brought up, or is that just kind of the way that you are personally? Does your family communicate fairly directly to each other, or does that just come from somewhere else?
Yeah, I think everyone's pretty direct. Like my family we will roast each other so hard out of love and stuff like that. So I think we're very pretty good communicators. We're not the best at making plans. It drives my wife crazy. We'll be like a couple days ago, we were just like, hey, do we want to play pickleball tonight? And we're like, sure. And everyone just like showed up at my sister's house. And like, it's just funny seeing how my family communicates versus hers and all that stuff, being from basically the same exact city. She was raised in Oakland Park too and went to California, came back, like we met here. So it's funny seeing how that, but in my early days, I tried to walk the line of like, I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And I think that's a Midwest thing too, of like, you just want to kind of like be as nice as you can, because you could also find yourself in that situation. So you don't want to pull people down with the feedback, but you want to like also make a point of like, yeah, this needs to be better. And I think that's another thing we'll talk about. You might have seen that in the doc, is like, when you're an editor, when you're a manager, when you're leading content, like it reflects on you as well if the writing isn't good. And I never really want to put my name near bad writing, plagiarized writing, anything like that, because it reflects on me poorly.
So let's flip it. Tell me a little bit more on the receiving end of some feedback that was tough.
Honestly, I haven't really, I don't want to toot my own horn. I don't want to sound like I get a big head, but like most of the feedback I get is very, very good, because I do care about like hitting goals, really putting good content out there, really trying to like go above and beyond. But like recently, I think the hardest one was when I got laid off from Musical. We did like the exit interview thing, and they're like, well, you really didn't live up to what we hired you for. And I'm like, interesting, because it's been 2 years. We've gone through 2 layoffs. I have no boss anymore. What I was hired for was a completely different company, and I've been a team player ever since. So what did you want me to do, I guess? And why am I finding about this now, not in a quarterly review or something like that? So that was tough, just because I'm like, that seems like a little bit of a cop-out, but if that helps you sleep at night, then that's fine.
Did you say anything in the moment?
Not really, because it was so unexpected. Like we had just been on a company retreat 4 days earlier in Mexico City with the whole company, took my wife down there, met all the people. And then the Thursday after we got back, granted, I had COVID that week too, so I was brain dead because of traveling and all that stuff. And then I got a message it goes like Wednesday, and they're like, hey, there's some time on your calendar for tomorrow. I'm like, this stinks. then went to the call and they're like, yep, we're going in a different direction. We want to be basic, like they want to be lovable or something like that. They're really high in the AI and they're like, we need headcount for engineering and we don't need headcount for marketing. I'm like, okay, fair. I get it. But I mean, timing probably could have been a little better.
And so you said something that stood out to me. You said, I was trying to be a team player, or I was being a team player. And for the listeners, before we jump on the call, I always send out a prep form to let folks have time and space to think about the questions and some of the answers and their experiences. And the word team player stuck out to me because in my own journey, when I had some of the toughest feedback that I ever received, when I self-reflected on it later, it was because I thought I was being a team player and putting the company over my personal agenda or the things that were important for me and my capability and just trying to do the best for the business. And then later that ended up being a mistake where I got feedback that was like, hey, you should have pounded the table harder for the things that you needed and held us accountable. And I was like, I didn't like really feel like I wanted to do it that way. It shouldn't have felt so hard to me. So I'm curious, that's my reflection, not yours. But I'm curious as I share that, if any of that feels applicable to your story.
A bit, but I think in my thing for the first layoff that happened while I was there, I survived that, but I was the only one on the marketing team. It went from a marketing team of, I think, 9 to me by myself. And I never really got a clear answer why I was retained. I mean, I think they like my work ethic. I think they like just what I've been doing. I mean, my metrics backed it up, but like, I don't think they have like a plan for what comes next of like, we're going to use you in this XYZ format. And that kind of happened to me when I was at Reforge too, except they were like, hey, we actually want you to run our podcast and launch it and get all that stuff going. So like, there was a little bit of like, I'm here, but what do I do? And I was one of the last people on the marketing team there after another round of layoffs. So I've like gone through that 2 times in a row of just like, hey, we have this big team to like, oh, you're kind of by yourself. But at Reforge, they had a plan for me. Whimsical, not so much. I mean, they planned on bringing them in another like head of marketing, all that stuff. But like my expertise of SEO, of growth and all that stuff just wasn't really being used. So instead of like just being wasted, I like just took on basically every problem that I found with the onboarding flow, the email flow, the marketing, all that stuff that I could put my brain into, I did. And I even did like product marketing stuff, which I'm not a product marketer. So I was stretching outside of my comfort zone to help the company grow, help that stuff, just because there wasn't really a plan for me of like, what do I do or what do I own? It's just like, I think it's just kind of in startups sometimes when they're like not sure what to do. It's just, you do marketing, quote unquote. And what does that mean? 10 different things. So,
Right. Well, and adaptability is an important asset when you're on any early stage team, right? The company's going to change. Even if they don't have a layoff, the company's going to change every 6 to 9 months anyways. And so your role is going to shift and evolve. So I guess where I'm wondering is if all those changes made your spidey senses tingle, like, hey, I'm the only one left. Now I'm doing all this other shit. Or if it was just like, you know what? Things are changing. Things will probably change again. Let me just ride it out and probably I'll be here a long time still.
I think it was the second one just because like people at Whimsical stayed for like 7 years. And I think that's a good and kind of a bad thing. Like having people around that long has a lot of institutional knowledge, but there isn't anything to come and like shake up the company. There isn't anything really to be like, yeah, we've been doing it wrong. We need to go Y instead of X because we brought someone new in. And like, I think the longevity is great for just culture, but sometimes there needs to be someone shaking the snow globe to kind of right the ship going in the right way.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of the show. If you are, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. The data shows something like 40% of the people who listen to the show are actually subscribed. It is the best way for you to support the show, and it helps the algorithm find other listeners who are just like you. If you're feeling generous, a quick rating or review makes a huge difference as well. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. Now let's get back to this episode. And so what happens next for you? I know before we recorded here, you were talking about some of the next steps. Why don't you share that with our listeners? Because I think it's a pretty inspiring story.
Yeah. So after I got laid off, I was just like, okay, cool. I mean, I was just kind of on the back foot. I mean, I got severance, so that was good. I had time to figure out what I wanted to do. One other thing in the exit interview, they're like, we wish you were better at AI. And I'm like, okay, interesting. So I got better at AI and I got really good at AI. And now I think I'm like one of the best marketers using it right now in those 3 months. Like that's all it took is just like me being super into how can I use ChatGPT and N8N and all these things to just like automate the most annoying stuff that I deal with as a marketer. And I've always been super into like automation. I was building Zapier back when Zapier was like super, super early, and they would like track. I just remember like they would track like every Zap you did, and like you got this whole history of all this stuff. And now it's this massive, massive company, and I just started building stuff with that to get better at it. That was kind of like my learning journey that I did. And now I like use it constantly. And I'm like an AI evangelist in DemoStack right now, as well as other places. Just like, it's not going to be perfect, but I know you can use it to replace a lot of kind of the annoying work that comes with being a content marketer or a growth marketer. Also during that time, I just started applying everywhere. Just so it's like, I don't really know where I want to go. I thought like, hey, I've been at a startup, maybe I want to go to a big company. I interviewed with places like Figma and Zapier and like made it pretty far with them, but just, I mean, market's bad. So like, I know people who probably were too high in their career applying for like the same things that I was going for. So I'm like, oh, something's a little off here.
And like neither people were getting the jobs though. It was like a really weird market. Yeah. 6 months, a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. It was rough. And I was like overqualified for a lot of these. And the interviews were going like 4 or 5 calls plus a project, plus a panel, plus all this stuff. And I'm like, one time, I'm like, honestly, I've already done this exercise with someone else. I can send you the PDF. I'm not doing it again. Yeah, I just got tired of that. And it was just a lot of like things move slow. You'd get to like final interviews and you'd like knock it out of the park. People would be like nodding along, all that stuff. And then you wouldn't hear anything for like 3 weeks. And you're like, okay, I guess I didn't get it.
And you're just getting ghosted and stuff? Was that sort of what was happening?
Ghosted all the time. And like, there were companies who were like, which I'll tell the John story after this, were like begging to hire me back in like 2023 and can't even get a response from a application. So I'm like, okay.
I was seeing the same thing with a lot of my coaching clients, where it was folks that I thought were overqualified for work, that were great, high quality candidates, tons of interviews, and just struggling at that last piece, getting ghosted and stuff. Yeah.
I just think a lot of these weren't being ever filled.
That's right. Yeah. Or they take it down or something. Yeah. That's so true.
I did see a lot of those of like random ones, and I'm just like, okay, I'll apply. And then like 2 months later, be like, yeah, we actually just took the job down. I'm like, interesting. But during that time, I kind of kept it secret that I got laid off for like the first month because I was embarrassed. I mean, I survived multiple layoffs at other companies. That was the first time I've been laid off. And it was definitely an ego kind of like, it hit me in my gut for sure. Cause I'm like, interesting. I had the metrics, I had the growth, I had the stuff to prove that I'm an asset to this company, and it just didn't really even matter. But after about a month, and like, actually it was like a role that I should have gotten. Actually 2 roles back to back where I got final interview and it was down to 2 people. I should have gotten both of them, honestly. After that, I'm like, okay, I can't just be secretly applying and doing that. I need to talk about it because my network has helped me in the past so much.
And so before you keep going, what were you saying? So you were saying, hey, I was trying to keep it on the DL that I got laid off. How were you doing that?
I just didn't talk to anyone. I mean, I told like some of my close people that I talked to, like Bridget and Eva and all those things that are like my friends from the marketing world. Like they knew, and they were sending me like back channel stuff, but I didn't really talk about it on LinkedIn, which looking back, I probably should have, or maybe not. Maybe this was the perfect time when everybody was like pent up and annoyed with all the same things that were happening to them. And then I think it was like June 1st or something like that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to post about it, and wrote this thing, which is still up on LinkedIn, about like, yeah, here's all my metrics. Thought I had it in the bag, thought I was safe. And 4 days later, get laid off after a giant expensive Mexico City trip with the company. And it just took off.
Can you describe in a little bit more detail for the folks listening, kind of what you wrote and sort of your intention behind it?
I think it was mostly to just put myself out there. Like, yeah, I'm looking for stuff because, like I said, I mean, there were companies in a previous job cycle that were like desperate to hire me. I mean, and my wife hates this is like up until actually this job too. I've never applied for a job that I've got. It's always been through back channels. It's always been through stuff like that. And even the demo stack one, like Manny, the CMO, found me on there and we just started talking and it led to stuff. And that's how I've always got all of these roles. But I think with the post, it was just to like put myself out there and like, yeah, I'm looking. And I know a lot of other people are looking and I know that I have experience and I've done all this stuff and just kind of like, I mean, I treated it like content, honestly. Like I'm going to tell my story. It's probably going to do okay. I might get 100 likes on it. And then I can start actively looking for stuff like out and post about it and stuff like that. And since I posted that, every couple of days I post more about it. I'm like, yeah, and just kind of create a story and tell a story of like, I know a lot of people are struggling. I also am struggling with this job search. Please, if you see anything, let me know. And then I also just started sending it to people who were also struggling. Of like, hey, here's a job. How can I help? And just the amount of DMs I got were overwhelming, probably 1,000. Like honestly, just of people either being like, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Hey, I saw this. Or like, hey, thanks for telling your story. I'm also struggling. And made a lot of connections from there, which was really good. Had a lot of calls, all that stuff. So it just kind of like took off like a rocket.
And so you went from, hey, I'm not telling anybody I got laid off to I'm kind of evangelizing that I did get laid off and it's hard and I'm struggling and I'm out here. And so you really were pretty vulnerable in what you shared. Were you nervous at all to do that, to go from kind of one extreme to the other?
Yeah, for sure. That's why it took so long. And like every time, like she's my fiance at the time, but like she would be like, hey, you got to talk about it. You got to do it. We started dating when I was like deep in my marketing thought leadership and she just saw how I could make things kind of happen just from that. So she's like, I don't know why you haven't done it. And I'm like, yeah, it's just embarrassing. I mean, I'd never laid off, never really been close to being fired or anything like that. And it's just like, this sucks. It's a bad feeling when you care about your work and you care about your output and stuff like that to just be like, yeah, you did good, but just not, we don't need you anymore, which is annoying.
And so you mentioned the post has like 700 or 800 likes, like went extremely viral. You got 1,000 DMs. As the notifications start rolling in and you kind of realize like, hey, I wrote this thing. It's really resonating. And I can't imagine how many impressions it got, probably over 1 million impressions, I would imagine. And so because of that, is there any moment where you're like, shit, I made a mistake?
Little bit, just because like I never really want to talk down about past employers or people that I've worked with in the past. Like I'm always pretty positive, and it did kind of like, it didn't call them out, but I'm like, it just told a story. Like, and I told it factually of how it happened. So I felt good about that. But I'm also like, anytime you're calling anything out, even if it's like a bad competitor where you're like, yeah, you guys suck, you always kind of are like, did I go too far? That kind of stuff. So it was just kind of like being vulnerable, but it's very truthful. So that's why I felt kind of okay putting it out there, but also like scary. Like, what if it's a dud? What if it's a dud?
Yeah, right. That would almost be worse.
Yeah. What if I got like 2 likes of like, yeah, good job, dude.
What I've also noticed in my own LinkedIn content creation journey is when you have something that goes like mega viral and it starts showing it to people who you've never heard of that are in like totally different spaces, you kind of attract some of the worst parts of the internet. Did you get any of that as well?
Not really. Actually, no, I still get these random people being like, hey, saw your post. Here's something for $14 an hour. And I'm like, did you read any of that? Do you see my experience? All that stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, I think I probably just got put in some database where they're just like, hey, he's looking for work. Let's send him the worst messages ever. But also all the interviews and calls I had from that experience were good. And a lot of them I could have said, yeah, this is good for me. And this isn't. And then there was one that I'm like, this was the worst interview of my life. I kind of got like attacked on the interview of like, because it started with, I had one interview with the recruiter and then it went to like VP of marketing. And I went into it thinking of it was just going to be a casual get to know you chat. And it was almost like a presentation chat where I was just kind of like put on the spot of like all these metrics that I had no idea about. They're like, we want to grow by 10%. How would you do that? And I'm like, I don't even know what your business does. Like I had the recruiter call yesterday and now I'm talking to you And
Let me guess, a former management consultant.
I think so. And it's very funny because I saw that, because I connected with the person like before the interview, I saw that they posted that they're still looking for the role like a couple days ago. And I'm just like, I'm not petty, but I do love a little bit of stuff like that. Where I'm like, yeah, you probably still are if you approached it like that.
Yeah. My spidey senses were tingling, and they were right. Yeah, I love that.
Big time. And I as soon as I got off the call, I emailed the recruiter. I'm like, that's the worst interview I've ever been in.
Oh,
Please
wow.
just fully take me off the list. I felt like I was set up to fail from the beginning, and just kind of said my piece. And she was very, I forget who it was. They were very kind of apologetic about it. So that was nice. But I also was just like, what happened? What just happened?
Hey, real quick, if you've been enjoying this episode, I'm going to take a wild guess that you're a marketing, product, or growth team lead, which is also my background. And when I first started leading my very first growth team, I have never been more stressed and worked harder and longer in my career because I didn't really have the right system in place. I said yes to everything, and suddenly I was in every single meeting and all the decisions were flowing through me. And I still had my own individual contributor workload on the side. And eventually I stumbled into something that I now call my growth operating system. It's basically a plug and play framework with templates and rituals and how to structure meetings and how to create and document your strategy so that your team can move faster, you can run more experiments, you can win more without you being the bottleneck. So if any of that sounds like you and you're looking for some support, check out my growth operating system at deliveringvalue.co/OS if you want to have more impact and influence without working around the clock. It's deliveringvalue.co/OS. I'd love to hear what you think. So we're talking a little bit about the power of vulnerability. What happens next, right? So you put yourself out there, you tell this story that you don't have to tell, but you feel compelled to tell. You share your truth, you get 1,000 DMs. And then what happens for you in your job hunt process?
Everything gets accelerated. I was just going to see if I could pull up my calendar to see how many calls I had like the week after, because it just was like, I was having so many calls that I lost my voice. Yeah, it was like, it went from like kind of like 1 or 2 a day or every couple of days to like 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 the week after, and then like 15, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. Like, and then it just did, this isn't even the worst one. So 2 weeks later, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 interviews in 1 week.
Dude, that's nutty. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture of it. I might have to redact the people, but it just like, it went absolutely bananas. But it also was like, I think in the marketing space, like I think I have a pretty okay following. People know who I am, people know what I do, stuff like that. And I think what helped with that was it like brought my name up to people I've worked with or interviewed in the past. And they're like, oh, we didn't even know you're looking. Here's this job. And that was the thing, is like people saw my experience, my stuff like that. And a couple were like, we don't have a role for you, but we will create one for you because we want you to come work with us.
I feel like there's a lot of people who are really nervous to be vulnerable in public. It's really like the whole thing on my show, right? It's like you're kind of being vulnerable in public, but there's a lot of people who are hesitant to do it either for cultural reasons or personal reasons, or they just don't feel like they have the reputation or the receipts. What would be your advice to someone out there who's in that position, right? They've been laid off. Maybe they've been laid off twice. They're looking for work and they're scared to tell their version of this story.
As kind of not helpful as this advice is, you kind of just have to do it. Especially in the market that we're in right now, there's so many people looking for work and they will resonate with you. And there's so many, like, I don't want to say opportunities, but there's like companies out there that are about to hire or want to hire something. They're like, oh, we need this XYZ thing. And you're talking about, and I guess my fiance tells me this is like, it only takes one. It only takes one offer, one job, one interview, one anything to get the ball rolling. And like, you can't have multiple jobs. I mean, you can if you're a freelancer, but like, it really only takes one. So like, even though I had all those interviews, like it was exhausting, but like it came down to one. I couldn't take all of them. I also think that's part of the vulnerable part is like, I think people think it needs to get those many likes. It needs to blow up, go viral, all that stuff, but it really just needs to be in front of the right person. And you never know until you kind of put yourself out there who that right person is, of like who's looking for what you do and is excited to work with you.
And did people bring up your post? Like, are you signing into these calls and they're like, Oh, you're the guy who got laid off on LinkedIn, right? Like, are people kind of like referencing stuff like that?
Yeah, because they would see the post and then shoot me a DM and they're like, hey, just saw your post. We should chat. And I'm like, okay, sure.
That's awesome. But it wasn't a negative thing. It was more just like, hey, we saw it. Like, we should chat.
Yeah, I think putting your wins in whatever story you're telling, that really helped too, because like I think it was like 135% organic growth I drove in a year by myself. That's nothing to sneeze at. So
Yeah.
just kind of add some tangibles. But I see a lot of people that'll be like, hey, got laid off, got 5 years experience doing XYZ, and like that's all they say. And like gotta go one step higher if you really want to be like use it as a way to attract people to reach out, stuff like that. You kind of have to prove your metrics.
I think a lot of people also, when they get either let go or laid off, they get into a funk and they just feel less than, or like energy wise, they feel low. And so they almost lose their receipts or discount their wins in a way that you're encouraging them not to.
So after I made updated my resume, I made a Notion site where I put all my wins with graphs, with everything. I mean, it was like a visual resume that kind of like proved the numbers I was claiming, and it linked out to all the podcasts I've been on, all the stuff that I've run, all that stuff. So it was like kind of like a little mini site, but I could spin it up super quick and I could send it out, and it was it was a live link. It was just like a website, but I didn't have to like sign up for Squarespace or do all that, which is such a pain. But one thing that I saw Elena Verna, which I worked with her at Reforge and still chat with her here and there, but she's at Lovable now running their whole growth engine. And she posted about how people were making like, not like virtual, but like interactive resumes with Lovable. And like, if I was looking for a job, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would spend a day just doing that because one, it shows you can kind of use these tools that are coming up. Two, you can tell your own story much more than a resume saying, hey, I did this and this and this. It's like, hey, here's all the videos I created for this company. They're all right here. You can watch them. You can see my work. You can see anything else I've done.
What was the John story?
The John story is John was one of the people that really wanted me to come work for, where was he at before he left?
Databox. And for the listeners, John is John Bonini, who's a good, close personal friend of mine, and actually is my co-builder for Camp Solo, which is my private solopreneur network.
Yes. So he was at Databox. This was right after I decided I wanted to leave Foundation and go more like back to SaaS, because Foundation was agency world and I just wasn't my vibe. Loved it. Loved working with Ross, loved writing the stuff, but it's just like a lot of the agency stuff was kind of creeping into my stuff. I'm just like, not really where I wanted to be. So I just started kind of like secretly talking to people of like, hey, thinking about leaving. John was one of them. I think that he was like the first person I talked to, but then it was another like kind of like call bonanza where I just talked to so many companies in a row. It was Reforge, it was Open Phone, it was all these different companies that I really liked. And John and them were the first ones to give me an offer, and I was about to accept it, and I just ended up didn't. I went with Reforge, and like looking back, don't know if that was the right decision, but like I think that kind of stung him a bit at the time. But now we're cool. I applied to the creator camp. Yes, no.
Oh, Camp Solo?
Camp Solo, yeah. Just because he's like, hey, we're looking for people. I'm like, oh yeah. And in the acceptance thing, he's like, what did he say? He's like, maybe we can hire you this time or something like that. And I'm like, okay, now we're joking about it. Okay, we're good. But yeah, it was just like, that was one of the harder decisions. Is I was so overwhelmed with the amount of people kind of like, hey, come work for us. It was like when content marketing was like every company had to have like a big content marketing budget. It was during COVID. It was all that kind of like where money was just flowing crazy. And it just was like, I had just come off like 3 or 4 in a row of teardowns that I published that just like each one would get bigger get bigger reach than the next. And then just was overwhelming. And I think it's kind of been my whole like career journey. Is it's like, I'll decide I want to leave and then I'll get overwhelmed with what I want to do. And then it's funny how that just keeps kind of happening.
Hey, if you're enjoying the stories on this show and feeling like you're ready to tackle some of your own hurdles, I'm here to help. If you didn't know already, I offer one-to-one coaching specifically for people who work on or around growth teams who want to have a bigger influence and impact in their roles. Maybe you're navigating some tough moments, whether it's managing your team or handling feedback. Maybe you just want to step into a bigger leadership role. Or maybe you're at a unicorn company today and you want to make sure that the company doesn't outgrow your skill set. Either way, I can help. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, head to deliveringvalue.co/coaching to learn a little bit more and set up a call with me to see if we jive. All right, enough from me. Back to the episode. And when you think, I think there's a lot of folks who will kind of nod their head as they listen to that. Do you have like a picture in your head of like where you want your career to go? Like you kind of map out your moves, or do you just go based on your energy or how things feel in the moment? Because I think that's a tension that I hear a lot about when I talk to folks is like, is this the right thing? Should I do this? Should I do that? And I kind of want to do this, but I feel like it's a lateral move and it's not going to look this way. Like, do you get into your head about any of that kind of stuff?
Oh, for sure. And then I'm like, oh, I'm overthinking it. And one thing that I'm always like thinking about is just coming from a marketing standpoint of like, can I actually market this? And when I came to DemoStack, like the thing that super impressed me was the product is pretty badass. Like it's years ahead of its competitors. They just haven't really ever invested in marketing at like scale now that the product's so good. So I'm like, oh, there's a lot of open space to do some cool stuff here. And I think that's like one thing that people might forget, like especially with a lot of the AI companies coming up of like, yeah, this is fun and flashy, but does the product actually have longevity and does it do anything? And I've seen a couple during the interview process where I'm like, oh, this is just something built on top of ChatGPT that they got funding for. And as soon as they change the model and they go to GPT-5 or they start using some different API, this thing's going to break. And like, I don't want to be around when they lay everybody off in 6 months, which probably looks like it's going to happen for some of the AI companies. So yeah,
100%. Yeah, that bubble's popping for some of those companies.
Yeah. And it's just, and I know I said this is maybe not a negative thing at Whimsical, but like if people stick around for a long time, like I think that's a really good sign. I was at Engage for 5 years. The people that I like joined, like hired with when I was employee number 7 or something like that. And like we all kind of left after 5 years because we're like, yeah, this was fantastic, but we're ready for our next thing. And like, if you can see that like the core team has been there a long time, that's kind of I want to say a good check mark, but it's like, oh yeah, okay. They're not going to just like cut and dry and lay people off.
Yeah. I wanted to loop back. We were talking earlier about kind of difficult conversations. You talked about being on the giving end of feedback. You talked about being on the receiving end of feedback. I'm curious to know, like on the topic of tough conversations for you as a leader, right? So you've been a team member and the leader of teams. Earlier in our conversation, we talked about different forms of tough conversations. We talked about you being on the giving end of feedback and coaching up other folks in your team. And we talked about you being on the receiving end of feedback, specifically at Whimsical and kind of getting let go and them saying you didn't really deliver on the role that they initially hired you for. Curious on the topic of tough feedback and difficult conversations. What's the hardest conversation you've had to have as a team lead?
I think it's like part of it is like content quality, just being able to like see someone's not going in the right direction and stuff like that. And then there's a couple times that I've just like caught people just like either plagiarizing intentionally or just not thinking it was a big deal to just like copy stuff from sources, stuff like that. And like when you're putting your name as a leader for content, as a content leader, your name is attached to everything that's underneath you. And like just coming from a journalistic background, like plagiarism is the worst sin you can ever do. And I just have that ingrained in me, which I think is part of the reason like I felt like didn't love using AI in the beginning is I just felt like a big plagiarism machine, but like kind of got over that because it's just, I know how to work with it and I know how to do that. But just like having that conversation of like, hey, I kind of saw that you might have been copying and doing this stuff. And then having to kind of confront other leaders about that and be like, hey, this happened. I'm not really even sure how to handle it. And I've had to do that a couple times, which is sad with freelancers, with other people that have kind of like worked internally. But it's just like, it's one of those hard conversations where you're like, how do I even have this conversation? And like the couple times that I've had to do it, like I've had to like document deep proof because I'm like, I don't want to swing at someone and then be like, yeah, you're wrong. Like, I just want to be like, hey, this is what I found. You guys do what you need to do with it. And like a couple times it's been handled nicely and we've moved on. But a couple of the other times it's just like, give them another shot. I'm like, interesting.
How do you even know if somebody plagiarizes? Like, is that something that you check for?
Again, not to toot my own horn again, but I'm such a like deep editor that I can tell when voice changes. And it's like
Okay.
when it's, and that's like what I'm always editing for myself, to just make sure like the voice flows. Cause sometimes I'll be writing and then I'll come back to it and be like, hey, yeah, going from paragraph 2 to 3, it's just awkwardness. And I think that's just my internal editor. But it's just like when it goes from like very clearly their writing to just be like, and like, wow, this is much better than the writing or much worse. And you're like, let me just search this on Google, and then you find it like immediately. You're like, okay. So it was like copied directly from the source, or it was like copied in a way that it was like they changed like one of the verbs or one of the nouns or something like that. Where you're like, 90% of this is the same. You just kind of like copied, and it wasn't quoted correctly and all that stuff. And like, that's kind of why I never want to come out swinging of like, hey, plagiarism. But if there is a repeated kind of thing of like, shit, we have to address this now because things are happening that I don't want to be a part of.
And so what happens after something like that, right? So you notice something, you confirm your hunch,
Yeah.
you learn that you're right. What's your next move after that? Do you think about the conversation you want to have directly with the person first? Do you talk internally to the leadership team and gather input? This is sort of one of those areas where I feel like I haven't had a lot of experience with this.
I think I kind of had to just make it up as I went for the first time it happened. And then since then, I've kind of got like always talk to leadership first to just be like, this is what's happening. I'm going to talk to them about it, because I don't want it either to be like me just going out and be like, hey, you did this, and accusing them of something, and then it all turns into something that I didn't want to, because like most of the time I've caught it before it's been published, but like I also don't have eyes on every single thing. So like,
of course, right.
Something
nor probably should you.
Yeah. Something could have gone out, and I'm just like, that's just, I can't. And then you lose that trust in whoever it is, of like freelance or internal, anyone where you're just like, and I am such a like, I put my trust in a lot of people, especially like other creators and stuff like that, of like, hey, you've got a long leash. Don't make me really regret that. I trust your judgment. I trust your expertise. And then when stuff like that happens, there's like not coming back for me. I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. So this is kind of like a slap in my face. I just can't really trust them to create again.
And so do you typically move on from a relationship with someone if you've noticed that in the past?
Yeah, it's a lot easier to cut when it's like freelancers, and then internally it's a little bit more messy, but like, again, I don't want to be connected to anything like that.
And so when you need to have a conversation like that, and I say like that because there's many difficult conversations that you need to have as a leader, and most of them you're not really trained for, right? When you're like a senior content marketer, it's not like, well, to be a director of content, you're going to have to deal with this situation. Let's role play it, right? Like that doesn't happen. And the same thing in the product-led growth world, you're typically solving these interpersonal problems for the very first time with almost no prior guidance. So do you game plan for that? Do you role play it with a manager? Do you just wing it? Like, how do you approach it for the first time? And what are the takeaways for other folks listening in their own journeys?
I think if it hasn't happened to you, like, and I'm guessing with the AI stuff, it's probably going to happen a lot more frequently, of just like copy and paste. And like, it's funny. I was auditing one of our DemoStat competitors' sites, and I'm like, all this content is AI, and they're not even trying to like pass it off as it. Interesting. That's okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But if you haven't had the conversation before, don't try to wing it. just any hard conversation like that, maybe go to your manager. I hate saying this, but like, I'm guessing there's something similar to this happened that people have talked about on Reddit. So like, go there. There's some good feedback that you can get from that and some guidance. But like, if it's the first conversation, like first one of these very hard conversations, you're new in the role, you don't have a great personal relationship with the person that you need to give the feedback to yet, just like ask for help. Don't try to put it all, because that's a lot of stress too, of like, what do I do on top of like the stress of like what just happened. So
that was always the stuff that was most stressful to me. I would have this weird interpersonal or like one-off thing that would happen, and I had no frameworks for how to solve it. And I sort of felt I'm going to use my words, it's not your words, but I almost felt like embarrassed or shame. It's like, well, I don't know how to solve it. Like I'm supposed to be a leader. I'm supposed to have the answers. I'm supposed to just know how to do all this stuff. But really, I was a beginner at solving all that stuff. And so I just sort of felt out of pocket. Anytime things like that happened, it affected my sleep. I would usually wake up in the morning. It'd be like the first thing I'd think about. And going into those meetings were some of my most nerve-wracking times.
Yeah, definitely lost sleep first time it happened because I'm like, what do I even do? How do I even? Right. And like, again, I don't want to swing at someone if it's just like a simple misunderstanding or they just didn't do it. But when it becomes a pattern, then you're like, can't ignore this.
Yeah, and I love the Reddit suggestion, by the way. Any other tools, frameworks, courses, anything else that have helped you as a leader navigate some of these one-off things?
Everything Reforge. I mean, everything we put out, or we. I guess at the time, everything we put out.
Former we.
But yeah, I think everything, Brian's got a good head on his shoulders for like, he's such a good content creator and he's been in the world for so long, like almost everything. Adam Fishman has great stuff. Elena, obviously, like I think Adam's Startup Dad is a great listen too, just because they do talk about how you kind of have to navigate the tech world in more of a kind of like very similar, like how we're talking, just from the lens of being a dad. So, I mean, go to Reforge, look at the artifacts. There's got to be something there, or just jump on Reddit. Don't ask ChatGPT. It will not. Well, as much as I love it, I never ask it questions like that because I'm like, it's not built for this.
I went on Adam's show when my last summer when my daughter was like 6 weeks old. He was like Startup Dad, but I was like Tired Dad. I was like, dude, are you sure? He was like, dude, I want you like first week when you come back from parental leave. I was like, I don't know if you do, man. He was like, no, I want it. I want the Tired Dad. I'm like, all right, man.
You got your brain barely working.
I know. I really like what he's doing too.
Yeah.
Dude, what has been either like a mindset shift or a habit or ritual, something that's had a big impact on your career that might be helpful for folks listening?
This is one that I've started doing a lot is send the DM, do it. Don't think about it, just send it. That's how we connected. That's how I've like made connections with other CEOs and stuff like that. And just made a lot of friends of just like, people want to talk. Like you're not going to, unless you're like being super salesy about it. Like, hey, check out my thing, do this, do that. But if it's like, hey, saw your post about this, I am also struggling with that. Or, hey, saw your post, I'm also working on something with N8N. Here's where I found some help. We should chat, stuff like that. Just like send the DM. You really don't know what's going to happen. And like, that's kind of the same idea I had with putting that post out is like, you never really know what's going to happen. And like looking back, I'm so glad I did, but there's a lot of hesitation. Like when you're reaching out to people, you might get ignored by half the people, but the other half are going to be excited to be like, hey, I made a new friend.
Right. Well, and I feel like all those people that you connect with them once. Maybe you've connected with a few of them on the phone, obviously, as well, because you took a bunch of calls. But like this community is small. You're going to probably cross paths with them again. And so now all of a sudden you have a relationship, which is a great unintended benefit as well.
Yeah, well, it's funny, like one of the people that when I was interviewing in 2022 came back around this round and like it just timing didn't work out with them at this point. But like I had that relationship from back in 2022 and they're like, hey, didn't even know you're looking, but we have some open roles coming up. And I'm just like, I kind of looking for right now. So it just never really worked out, but it's just like, you never know. You really never know.
Dude, anything that hasn't been said that you want to say directly to the listeners at this point?
It's important to find your voice, anything like that, because like that is one thing that from day one, I've always had a pretty, I don't want to say strong voice, but just like a distinct voice in all the content I write. And I never, like if you'll look on the demo stack stuff, like stuff written by me is kind of casual. I feel like it's easier to write from how you talk and stuff like that. So it's just finding your voice, finding what makes you unique early in your career. And if you haven't found that yet, it's not too late. It's just like owning it as well. And like a lot of my content that I create is also just not controversial, but I'll take a stance on one thing or the other and really dive deep on it. So just like, don't be afraid to be noisy and loud and kind of put your voice out there. And that goes back to like the send the DM thing.
That's sort of the theme of this whole conversation. Don't be scared, send it, be vulnerable. All the good things happen when you speak your truth and live your truth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Dude, thank you for coming on, sharing a little bit of your story and a whole bunch of the game. For folks who are following or listening that want to follow and connect with you, where should we send them?
Just fully off basically everything except for LinkedIn. It just became too much of a brain suck to try to manage everything. But haven't been posting much on LinkedIn the past couple weeks, but getting back into it now that I have some brain space, and just follow me there.
We'll put links to all that stuff in the notes. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Thank you. This has been fantastic. It was really fun chatting.